Hello viewers, myself is Dr. Neeta and you are watching my channel Learn Literature with Dr. Neeta. So let us begin today's topic.
Hello dear students, today we would learn about structuralism, which is a quite complex literary theory. So a number of videos are there and today we are going to begin with its first part, in which we would deal about its general introduction, and in the other parts we would define how this theory was used by the different people of literature and how it became the part of literary criticism. So first let us begin with its background and definition. Structuralism began as an intellectual movement in the mid 20th century France. It means it started in France in the field of linguistics, but later it spread to the different fields of knowledge like anthropology, philosophy, literary criticism, sociology, psychology and what not. Though structuralism proper began in 1950s and 60s, its origin may be traced back to the studies made by the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. So obviously its initiation was by the Swiss linguist. He propounded this theory of structuralism. He applied it on linguistics, but in its proper form it began to appear in 1950s and 60s. The impact of structuralism became visible in Britain mainly in 1970s and 80s. So this movement started in France and later on it came to Britain and the other part of the world. The theory is based on the assumption that things cannot be understood in isolation, and for their proper understanding these are to be seen in the context of larger structures of which these are merely a part of. This assumption, though it is of 2 or 3 lines, it is a little bit confusing and complex, and to understand this basic assumption you will have to understand what the structure is and how this structure has been implemented. Idea of structuralism has been implemented on the different things. In the later videos you would get the clear cut concept of this assumption, but at this time you should keep in mind that the things cannot be understood in isolation. Rather, they can be understood when they are seen in the context of the larger structures. And what are these structures that we would define later on. This structuralism challenged the new criticism, which was very popular in those days, and rejected existentialism and its idea of radical human freedom. It expressed how human behavior is determined by cultural, social and psychological structures. Again, the term structure is quite confusing to you, that we would see later on and everything would become clear to you. So now something about Ferdinand de Saussure and his structural linguistics, because this idea was first the first initiated in the field of linguistics, and Ferdinand de Saussure was a linguist. He was also a professor. He used to teach linguistics to the students, and what was his assumption and why he thought in this respect that I have mentioned here. He was dissatisfied with the historical study of language. It means he was dissatisfied by the diachronic approach of a language. And now the question arises, what is that diachronic approach? Diachronic approach is the approach with which the language is studied in relation to its development. It means the questions like where a language came from and how the words emerged and changed during the course of history. This kind of study of language is called the study of language or synchronic way of studying a language, in which you are answering merely from where it came, from where the language came, and how the words are getting modified with the passage of time. Now, he was dissatisfied with that idea. Now, what he wanted to suggest? He favored synchronic approach. It is entirely different from the diachronic approach which was popular in those days. He favored synchronic approach, according to which language was considered more than a collection of individual words. Previously, it was considered that it was a collection of words, but now they were not considered. They were obviously collection of individual words, but it was more than that, because they were having, these words were having their own histories. It was thought to be guided by a structural system of relationship amongst words, as these were used in a given point of time. It means the words that were used at a particular point of time, they were guided by some structural system of relationship. Now, the question again arises, what is that structural system of relationship? That we would learn in the later videos. Students, it is a little bit confusing theory, so we cannot define and understand its definition word by word. Rather, first of all, we will have to understand what a structure is, and in that light you would automatically would learn about these things. He also wrote a book, I should not say he wrote a book with his authorship was published in 1916. It was a posthumous publication because he died in 1913, and it was a course in general linguistics. As I told you, Ferdinand de Saussure was a professor, so he used to give lecture to his students. He never wrote a book, but one of his colleagues collected the notes given by him to his students, and through those notes, through the collection of those notes, he prepared a book, and the name of the book was Course in General Linguistics, which got published in 1916. So now try to understand what is structure. You see, this is a building, and the building is made up of bricks, it is made up of windows, it is made up of other components like doors, etc., and it is having a particular structure. So what Saussure wants to say is that if you are trying to understand the significance, the relevance of its one component, you have to understand it in relation to whole of the structure and in relation to the other components of the structure. To make it clear, you can understand it with the help of the another picture, that are the rubbles of building. This picture is having different things like bricks, the pieces of window, or the frame of the window, or the other components like doors, etc., of window. So they are like a heap of things. They are a kind of aggregate. All the things that are there in the building are also there in the rubbles of the building. But as far as the importance and significance of each and every component is concerned, in the rubbles of building, nothing seems to be significant and important, because the different components are not connected to each other with a particular kind of relation. This relationship you may understand in this structure. It means the structure having different components, and they are important and significant in relation to each other and in relation to whole of the structure. This is what Saussure wants to say. We may also understand by the other structures, like you are studying the solar structure. This is sun, and these are the other planets which are moving around sun. So solar system as a whole is a structure, and the individual planets like Mars and Uranus are having significance, importance, or you may call relevance, as they are the part of that structure. So, if you want to understand significance of Mars, you have to understand whole of the structure. This is what he wants to suggest. We can also take another example of carbon dioxide. This is carbon, one carbon and two oxygen are there, and they are connected to each other with these bonds. So, what are the components of this structure? Carbon, these bonds, these electrons and oxygen. If we are trying to understand the significance of these two electrons separately, they would not at all be significant in the same way as they are significant here in the structure of carbon dioxide. So, the significance of bonds or significance of carbon can be seen when it is in relation to oxygen and when it is in relation to the whole of the structure of carbon dioxide. So, this structure is not a new thing if we try to understand even in the field of literature. Aristotle has talked about the structure of a tragedy, a structure of a plot. So, here is a picture of a plot structure. So, it is having a number of parts, as all of you know: exposition, rising action, climax, following action and resolution. So, if you are trying to understand resolution, it is one of the components of the whole of the structure. If you are trying to understand resolution, you have to understand what is following action, how it is related to climax, how it is related to exposition, how the things have been developed that this resolution is coming out, and only then you can understand the significance of resolution or the significance of climax. So, this is what Sheshir wants to say, that not only the interrelation of components, but also the relation of one component to whole of the structure is very essential. Here are some other structures. This is the structure of state government. So, if you want to understand significance of governor, you will have to tell that it is under executive or it is above chief minister. It means by comparing and contrasting, we are trying to justify the significance and relevance of a particular person. So, as it is the structure of a state government, this theory can also be applied in political science. Similarly, here is the structure of poetry. These are the components of that structure. It is having rhyme, stanza, meter, line break. But if you are trying to understand meter separately from this poem or from this poetry, then it would be useless, because meter can be applied on the structure of poetry also. So, to understand relevance of meter or significance of meter, one has to understand whole of the structure of poetry. So, I think you would be able to understand the different components of structure and how they are related to the other components of structure and how they are related to structure as a whole. So, these are some features which I have summed up. I have already told all these things, but we are trying to sum up. Structure is made up of constituent parts or the components which we are calling, which are always subservient to the structure as a whole. So, if we are going to compare components are important or the structure as a whole is important, then according to Sheshir, we come to the conclusion that the constituent parts are of less importance in comparison to the structure as a whole. That is why components are subservient to the structure as a whole. These component parts have no relevance or meaning outside the structure. So, if we are trying to understand the significance of bricks outside the structure of building, it is having no relevance. It may have some other relevance, but as far as its relevance in that structure is concerned, it is entirely different. So, these parts have no relevance or meaning outside the structure in the same way as they used to have within it. Their relevance is perceived not because of any inherent quality, but because of their relation with other constituent and system as a whole. So, the components are relevant, they are significant, they are valuable, not because of any inherent quality in them, rather they have been used by the creator, they have been used by the people in that particular manner, that is why they have become significant. So, we may understand it like that, that no inherent quality is there in the component. For example, we are having a building, and this building is having doors, and door is having a latch, and latch is on the right side or the left side. This is not pre-decided, rather it means it is not any inherent quality which is possessed by that particular manner. So it depends on the will of the person who is trying to make that door. The relation between the constituent part is guided by arbitrary rules. So this is what I was telling, that the rules that are guiding the factor, that how these component parts would be related to each other, it is merely arbitrary. Arbitrary, it depends on the will of a man, how he would use or how he would maintain the relation between the component parts of a structure. We can also understand it with the help of the example of the building. So if the building is having window, and the window is 2.5 feet away, above the floor level, it is not it has not been decided by anyone that it would be merely 2.5 feet above the floor level, rather it is an arbitrary rule. It has been decided that it would be put here, and that is why it has been put here. There is no logic or science behind that. Structures are not static, and that is why the things are not static, as it depends on the person who is preparing that structure, or the persons who are preparing that structure. It depends on their will. That is why they continue mostly change, and that is why they are not static but dynamic. They change with the passage of time. So buildings are changing in their structure, all of you know, as it depends on the will of the person who is making them. So that is why they are changing. They are present in all areas of thought. So these structures are present in all areas of thought, whether it is science, or it is political science, or it is psychology, or it is linguistics, or it is language, or it is literature, or it is sociology. In every field, such structures are found. They are found in all areas of thought and study. Therefore, study of all disciplines have become calculative and scientific, because we are trying to understand that structure. We are trying to understand those components. We are studying how they are related to each other. It is a kind of scientific study. That is why the social sciences, humanities are also begin to be guided by scientific rules. So now try to understand Saussure's concept of signifier and signified. This is one of the significant contribution by Saussure, that he has given this concept. So try to understand it. Saussure developed this approach to study language. As I told you earlier, that he applied this theory in language first, because he was a linguist. In it he states about the linguistic sign. He is talking about linguistic sign, that is a word. So for example, here is a word tree. It may be either written or it may be spoken. So this word tree is known as signifier. So someone has said tree, and the person who is listening this word is having a concept in his mind that tree would be like that. So this mental concept is signified, and the sound or the picture of this word is signifier. And he is telling how the meaning is conveyed through words. He has told us the process how the meaning is conveyed through words. This word TREE is conveying a meaning. And what is that meaning? This picture of the tree. Someone has uttered the word tree, and the mental concept of tree is framed in the mind of other person. So signifiers may be words spoken or written on the page, or an image, or any facial expression. As I told you, signified is the concept that signifier refers to. Together the signifier and signified make up the sign, as I told you previously, that signifier and signified together make a sign, which is the smallest unit of meaning. these are connected to each other by arbitrary relationship. So again I have told you arbitrary relationship, and again I am telling in this field which he has told. So this tree, this word TREE would produce this mental concept is arbitrary, because this word TREE has been used for a long time by the persons of a community, persons of a nation, that they are continuously using this word tree for this concept. That is why it is embedded in the mind. So whenever we are saying tree, this image comes to our mind. So one thing that you should keep in mind, that in one country or in one language this is tree, but in another language another word for this concept may be there. Concept is there, but the word would be different. In Hindi we are calling it ped. We are not understanding it as tree. We are calling it ped. We are calling it vraksh. So this signifier is the creation of the community, and this creation has been projected by a particular concept, and as it has been done for a very long time, it has embedded in the mind of people. So these are connected to each other. Signifier and signified are connected to an arbitrary relationship. There is no logic. That tree would be said and this concept would be framed. There is no logic. Vriksha would be called and this concept would form. There is no logic. It has been done for a long time. This is arbitrary relationship. He gives more importance to word than the mental concept. So this is again a thing. He gives more importance to word than mental concept. So he is saying that this is changing. Concept is the same, whether we are calling it tree, we are calling it ped, we are calling it vriksha. So what is significant? Significant is word. Significant is signifier. Is more important in comparison to signified. It is changing as per the requirement or as per the arbitrariness of people. It is changing. That is why it is more important. Now another concept that has been given by Sachot is langue and parole. So French term langue refers to the system or structure, the whole of which is the work of collective intelligence of a community. It is abstract and invisible, but could not be changed at the will of any individual. So this is again a significant concept, how language came into existence. So he has given two terms. One is the langue, another is the parole. So what is langue? Langue is the system of structure. How that system of structure has developed? It is the work of the collective intelligence of a community. Try to understand that there is a community, there is the people of a nation, and they are continuously using some words for a particular thing. They are calling this thing a bottle, they are calling this thing a table, they are calling this thing a chair. So they are having a long list of words, and how they have developed? It is a work of a collective intelligence of a community. Whole of the community has decided or has used that word for a particular thing. So this is this whole of the langue, whole of this system of language, structure of language is the work of the collective intelligence of a community. Now what happens when generation after generations are using those sets of words, that this is for bottle, this is for table, this word has been used for chair. So they have been using it for generation after generation, and that is why it has become the part of their brain, and they are always there in their brain, and it is abstract and invisible, but it remains there, but could not be changed at the will of any individual. But they cannot change. Any individual, if he wants that I would not call this thing a tree, he cannot do that. I would not call this a chair, he cannot do that, because it is an established thing that this kind of object which is having a stem and leaf and branches, that would be called tree. So it cannot be changed by an individual. So this is langue, that framework, That is structure. Now, what is parole? Parole refers to the individual utterance or speech which totally depends on the will of the speaker. Now, what speaker can do? A speaker can select the things from that lang according to his own need, and he may utter or he may speak the words according to his own choice. So, the words which are coming from individual's mouth, they are parole, but the structure from which he is taking the word, that is lang. So, lang is a greater structure and parole is its one of the component. According to Saussure, there could be no meaningful utterance without following the norms of lang. If we are not following the norms of lang means that is structure. If we are not following the norms of that lang, the grammar, the words, if we are not following the norms of that lang, there could be no meaningful utterance. It means a simple utterance or a play or a dance performance or an event, etc. can be better understood with proper understanding of lang, under which that parole is functioning. As I told you, that lang is that broader structure of language which has been developed for a long time by the collective intelligence of our community, and parole is what an individual is grasping from that and uttering here. So, lang parole is working under lang because it is one of its component. Saussure also states about binary opposites as human mind could perceive difference more readily in terms of opposite. This is another concept which has been given by Saussure, the binary opposite. For example, there is day, day, day. So, to make someone understand what is day, we have to tell him that what is not night is day. Similarly, if we are trying to understand, trying to make someone understand who is a woman, then we would say that one who is not a man, one who is not a girl, one who is not a boy is a woman. So, these are the binary opposites. Yani man is opposite to woman, day is opposite to night. So, he says the human mind could perceive the differences more readily. That is why binary opposites are quite significant in learning and understanding the things. So, thanks for patience listening.